So for those of you who remember my drawing video about the Metaluna mutant from This Island Earth will recall that it was a Universal International movie from the 50s that was just kind of okay, that the most memorable thing about it were the monsters, who were probably mostly known from merchandise than the movie itself, and then I went off on a long tangent about Mystery Science Theater 3000. Well, today we're talking about another movie that was done by Universal International in the 1950s that I thought was just kind of okay, that also had monsters that were more memorable through merchandise, and that also ended up on Mystery Science Theater 3000. Today we're talking about The Mole People. So my fellow Misties will recall that the Mole People was featured pretty early on during the Sci-Fi Channel era, which is probably the episodes I watched the most growing up. And even before then, the Mole People showed up via stock footage in an earlier episode when they watched a movie called The Wild World of Batwoman. And even before then, the Mole People showed up not in a movie, but as silent henchmen down in Deep 13, where they worked for Dr. Forrester and TV's Frank, and didn't really do too much of anything. I think they played a punk guitar riff once, and that was pretty much it. But they were memorable down there. So getting back to The Mole People itself, it's just kind of an okay movie. As I said before, the monsters are probably the very best thing about it, although there are some nice sets and some nice matte paintings here and there. Mole people, of course, are a theme I've riffed on before. If those of you who have checked out my channel or are familiar with Scapula will recall the third episode of the Dr. Caliban and the Sinister Monster Doom Legion cartoons, which featured the Mole Trolls, which were largely based on the Mole People and some other similar creatures, such as the little midget ones from Superman Meets the Mole Men from the 1950s. The Mole People itself is just, yeah, as I've said a few times, it's just kind of okay. And the most memorable thing about the Mole People is probably something that not a lot of people know about. In fact, whether or not this is actually true is debatable. But if it is, it's pretty horrible. And that is the ending of the movie. So I'm assuming most of you have watched the movie and recall the very abrupt ending where the love interest girl is just randomly killed. It's something that happens very choppy, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and kind of leaves you scratching your head saying, well, what the hell was that? Well, the ending apparently was something that did not make the heads of Universal International happy, and here's the reason why. So in the movie, yes, our square-jawed, boring, arrogant hero, played by John Agar, who played a lot of square-jawed, boring, arrogant heroes, ends up with a marked one that is a girl who is supposedly an outcast from the Sumerian civilization, but she conveniently is attractive and blonde and all the things that would make her appealing to a leading man and to the audience. And they were supposed to live happily ever after and all that stuff, blah, 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 blah. According to legend, Universal International didn't want that hookup to happen. The reason why is they were afraid it would promote interracial relationships. Isn't that kind of strange? Well, if you think in the movie itself, the girl, I think her name is Adad or something like that, is supposed to be Sumerian and therefore not American. And since the American hero hooks up with a not American woman in the 1950s, that could only spell catastrophe. So they ordered the ending to be changed where she's just randomly killed off. I don't know whether or not this story is true. Whether or not it's real or fictional, either way, it's pretty freaking horrible that studio heads would think that. How could people be so racist in the 1950s? Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people would prefer to just bury that kind of thought. Bury it much, much deeper than even a mole person could dig. So there you have it. Pretty cool monsters, pretty mediocre movie, pretty funny appearances on Mystery Science Theater, and a pretty horrible behind-the-scenes story. Can you dig it? Bye-bye.